Now, these next few lessons are going to help us maybe think about this in a little more positive way. I kind of feel like we've been going down this negative path, getting darker and darker. What could happen? All that was done to make you take this seriously, because it is something that's serious, and it is something that we can kind of look at a lot of times and think, well, is it really that big of a deal? I think a lot of people put out fake things and they don't see why it's a big deal. So we needed to kind of ingrain why this is a big deal before we move on to what we're going to do now. Over the next few periods, we are going to create a plan, a comprehensive plan to fight back against misinformation. So that is our goal, fighting back against misinformation and disinformation. How do we stop this? And there's a couple ways that we're going to look at this and a couple different things we're going to do. But by the end of this, you're going to create a comprehensive plan. Let's begin with step one. Step one is hopefully the easiest part. I'm going to kind of walk you through it a little bit. We need to identify the problems we are going to solve. So it's all well and good to say misinformation, disinformation is a problem, but those are way too general. We need to get down to all the things that are problematic about disinformation, right? I want you to do a little bit of your own research on this, so I'm not going to give you all of the things we need to fix, right? I'm not going to give you everything, maybe some of it though. So let's really think about this. What are the issues? What are the problems we need to solve? Well, one big problem that hopefully has jumped out at you from the moment that we started talking about is from a human side. How do we get people to take responsibility for their own decisions, right? So there's a lot of things we're going to talk about and go over in the next few class periods about other possibilities of fighting back against this. But the number one thing that we really can do is control what we control ourselves. And how do we create this situation where people are their own media literacy detectives and aren't getting fooled by misinformation or disinformation? So, one of the ways we could do this is that we make media literacy actually a requirement for every school in the country. And every school in the country begins teaching these media literacy lessons. So that could be one way you could go about doing this. Another way is maybe we get celebrities, people that have wide reaches, and they go out there and maybe there's a nonprofit that pays them and they talk about how important it is for us to consider what we're taking in and consider how important this misinformation is. That could be another way where we start trying to get people to think a little bit about what they're taking in. Again, remember what I'm focusing on right now is people and that being part of the problem. Another problem, though, is maybe what happens on social media could be regulated by social media itself, right? A lot of this misinformation really exists on Facebook, right? That's the number one. Facebook is number one for misinformation. But Twitter has lots of misinformation. Instagram is getting to the point where there's lots of misinformation on there. I mean, really, there's probably misinformation on TikTok. Maybe I'm not sure what that would look like. Are they doing a fake dance? I'm not sure. Miss me on that one. Eventually, there probably will be. I'm sure there's even Snapchat has misinformation. So I guess the second thing we could think about is controlling the ability of people to post misinformation on social media, right? That could be another thing that you could look into. And are there regulations? Are there regulations you could suggest, right? So that's another problem is it exists on these social media platforms. Should they stop it? That could be another problem we want to address. The third problem I'm going to give you for free here is the problem of technology. You remember that article about the information apocalypse, and they mentioned how good some of these programs are. And I left a couple other links that show examples of how good these programs are at creating fakes. How do we stop that, right? That's a problem that needs to be addressed. How do we decide whether something that looks 100% real is fake. How do we decide? How do we stop something like that? What I would like you to do, and this is kind of today's lesson, is come up with 5 to 10 big problems that you think exist that you want to try and solve. So about 5 problems to 10. Push yourself. If you think you can come up with 10, come up with 10. At least get to 5. But really try to push yourself, right? Think about this as something for the greater good. Think about how famous you'd be if you solve this problem. This is a problem that exists all across the world. So this is something we really should be trying to solve. So that's this first part of this little project we're going to do is just to come up with some way, some ideas of what we need to try and stop. The next step we're going to come up with is start looking into solutions. All right. Thanks for joining us.